everyone for coming today, and people on Zoom. Can we have a thumbs up from Isabella if you can catch? Great, awesome. Thanks, Isabella. Just to get going, so I acknowledge that we're on Wurundjeri country today. Of all days, what a day to be here. I know there's diverse opinions on things, but for those who are into things, go it. Yeah, well, we're a democracy, we'll find out later. But yeah, for those who are here with lived experience of mental health, I also acknowledge your journey as well. Thank you for coming into the city today. I know it's not easy to come into the middle of the city, so there's tea. Please have a cup of Earl Grey tea. Thank you so much to all the Schizy Inc team that helped us get going today. So Fiona, who's down on the door, letting us in. Did we all see Fiona on the way in? Yeah, so give her a hello on the way out. And Tom, who helped set up today with the tea and the coffee. And Mitchell here on tech, AV, came in, and there's operating Zoom. So all you Zoom people, Mitchell's your person. And then Evan, who's doing the camera as well today and did the AV training for the camera. So, and all the Schizy Inc committee that have supported Schizy Inc over the year. Michelle down the back there, who's vice chair, and yeah, we're all a great community of doers, I think. So we're going to do a short panel yak, and then we're going to hand over to you to join into the conversation. Unfortunately, people on Zoom, we can't get to your questions. Unfortunately, you should be here. No, I understand. So I'm going to introduce the panel, and then I'm going to open their minds. So to my left is Adam Pollock. Adam is a musician, and I don't have any intros, so I'm just relying on memory here. Adam is a musician.
I've already had my mind opened way too much before.
So what I might actually do is get you to introduce yourself, because I know you each as friends, but you might have a different way of introducing yourself. So you've got 30 seconds to go down the line and introduce yourself.
My name's Adam Pollock. I'm living down in Geelong at the moment. I have a lived experience of mental illness and hospitalisation. It's not working. I think its battery's gone flat too, but maybe. Check 1, 2. Yeah, I consider myself, I'm a tradie as well, but I consider myself an arts advocate and activist, and mental health advocate and activist, and economic advocate and activist, and also garbage warrior.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Hannah Friebel. I have a lived experience of mental health challenges, and I also identify with the lived spiritual emergency model of understanding mental distress.
My name's Daryl, and I've come down from Kinglake today, and yeah, similarly I have a lived experience of mental health challenges.
My name is Chelsea. I have a lived experience of mental health challenges within the physical health space, and I try to help people through that space, so improving physical health and improving mental health at the same time.
Oh, hi, I'm Sandy. I've been around for 1,000 years. It feels like 2,000 years actually. I've been a mental health advocate person with lived experience, and also I'm an old and submerging poet. That's me.
I'm Bramble, Bram for short. I am predominantly a disability activist, but I also do a significant amount of visual arts. As well as being a mental health advocate, I'm mostly a disability activist with regards to mobility and housing. I think that's me.
I'd like to ask you each, what is your lived experience, perspective, opinion or experience of mental health?
Well, it's similar to the spiritual emergency model, whereas I feel like I've had a complete dissolvement of ego, completely dissolvement of ego, where I've gone back to the pure self. So, but however, they don't get it. Like people don't, like the general public don't get, the non-ordinary, and they kind of think, oh, you've got an illness, there's something wrong with you, and it's, to me, it's like, how are they ever going to see it our way? And I think the best way to do that is through the arts again. So
thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
I think a huge part of recovery is learning how to find your identity again and find meaning and purpose and hope. And in many ways, that happens in community, that happens relationally. And I think that's a model of healing that I want to be a part of.
So my experience is probably one of just feeling isolated and alienated and feeling like significantly different and really not being able to find others that I could speak about that with. And yeah, I think that exacerbated whatever crises I was going through, just that sense of being a part or being significantly different. And it's been one of my joys is being able to find people who I have been able to find common ground with and sometimes make mischief and play and have fun and subvert and create. And so consistent with the other panel members, I think recreation or cultural frameworks are really useful for mental health, mental illness.
My perspective of mental health is that physical health has a significant correlation in improving mental health, and unfortunately a lot of people who suffer with difficulties with their mental health think that they can't improve their physical health because of it. And in improving your physical health, you actually will improve your mental health in a lot of ways by getting on top of that. So I like to teach people how to get on top of it in ways that are not so common knowledge, and I find it really, really helps people with a lot of different issues that they're having.
On diagnosis, my identity was shattered completely. I went from a person with career prospects, whatever, to nothing, to nothingness. And the shattering of the ego and the identity was just so profound. And I think for me, weaving my way through that shattered ego to find myself as a poet was transformative, because I went from Sandy schizophrenia to Sandy poet, and that change of name from schizophrenia to poet was so embracing and so transcendent. And just to actually write a poem from my imagination, to know that it's still working, it still operates, and I can write a poem is so transformative. But also physical health is important too. Like, I love playing hockey, and so I love having the idea of music, writing, advocacy and sport in my life, because that's mental health for me.
With regards to my experiences with mental health, I have been more or less not doing well my entire life. That was a part of my formative experiences, and coming into my 30s now, what I'm actually discovering is that the thing that makes me feel more supported in my community is supporting the community. Most of my activism work makes me feel better most of the time. I do have to balance it, and I think that balance is one of the most pivotal factors. But between being able to do my art, being able to rest, being able to do the exercises that I do weekly, and being able to be a sort of active part of changing the community, I found a real sense of purpose that I don't think I would have found if I didn't have a sort of complex history of mental health.
Thanks, Bramble. I might also say, because I was so focused on batteries before, that every single person on this panel is running their own business out in the world and doing amazing things. Like Chelsea is a sports management person in sports, and Daryl's running a earth ship up in the bush, natural building and the environment and community building. And Hannah's running, spiritual care in the psych system and outside of the psych system too. So everyone here is doing amazing things outside the mental health model and outside of the mental health system. So we'll get to hear some more about what you do and why. So with that sort of question, what sort of work do you do in the community that does incorporate a concept of mental health? So Bramble, if I might start your side this time.
Some of the work that I do with regards to mental health is honestly a lot of one-on-one and small group support. Peer conversations, I think, are a large part of being able to access a lot of the community. And without access to the community, you just sort of crumble a lot of the time. Community means something different to everyone. So a lot of the people I know who are also struggling with complex mental health issues end up being very isolated. And the end result is that you end up talking to a lot of people who haven't had their experiences normalized or validated at all, and being not exactly gentle but prompting in your discussions allows for a wider range of people in the community to engage in activism, to engage in advocacy, and to engage in community. So that's a lot of what I do.
Thanks, Bramble. Sandy?
I don't actually work. I've never had a full-time job in my life. I've been on a pension all my life, from the DSP to the old age pension. Go figure. But what I do. I've done a lot of public talking about being crazy. It's about raising compassion, understanding, and respect for us as a cohort of people. I don't speak for other people. I speak for myself. But hoping that what I have to say, in inviting people into a psychotic mind and inviting people into the world that we live, that it can raise some compassion and respect and understanding. Who knows if it does? I'm chair of Schizy Inc, so that's another thing that I do. I'm a hopeless chair of Schizy Inc, but I'm trying. And just with my writing, so it's about, for me, it's been about expressing who I am as authentically as I can, and to engage with other people, to invite them into several worlds that I experience, and hopefully to gain empathy and understanding. That's all I can do as a old and submerging poet.
Thanks, Sandy. Chelsea?
So in terms of helping the community with their mental health, a way in which I've done that is a lot of people who have mental health difficulties harbour a lot of anxiety in leaving the house. Sometimes things like gyms and group classes aren't accessible to them. So what we actually do is we go to people's homes. We have one-on-one sessions with them. We're very, very open and inclusive about people's different disabilities, whether it be mental or physical. So we come straight to people's homes and we make sure that the training is done at their level. You know, they feel like they're improving every single week, every single time you see them, because that feeling for them is something that, you know, they may not experience when they're just trying to take steps forwards with their mental health. But, you know, we make sure when they're doing things with their physical health, they can see the progress, and that is it makes them feel really good for themselves.
Chelsea, I might just jump in there just to ask you, because you've disclosed you have lived experience as well.
Correct.
So does that inform your work, and not just your work, but does it inform the business that you run as well, so you can have input in those things?
Correct. So actually one of the main reasons that I got into the business that I'm in is that I had anxiety. I was diagnosed with bipolar. I had a lot of difficulties getting into an exercise routine. I really wanted to get fit. And my experience was that I went to a gym. I had a really, really hard time. I had a bad personal trainer who was not very good. And because of that, I gave up on myself and my goals, and I kind of isolated myself. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to just learn how to do it on my own from home. And in doing that, I really, really grew into myself, and hitting my exercise goals meant that I felt more confident. And I just thought, you know, I want to be able to do this for other people. And we have done it for a lot of people. And it's very, very nice to see what kind of change you can make for people.
Woo, go Chelsea. Daryl?
I think that my experiences of institutionalisation as a teenager impacted me a lot. Like, I feel like sitting with people in hospital and hearing their stories and sharing some of mine, and just getting a sense of, you know, what was in common in terms of abuse or trauma or oppression or experiences of difference really informed my work. And when I came to Melbourne to go to university, essentially, I got involved in a lot of activist work. So from about 19 or 20, I was a director at Imagine the Future, and we were looking at social justice, ecological sustainability and cultural diversity futures. And, you know, that was just great work. I really enjoyed being an organiser and working across disciplines with really interesting progressive people who are interested in big change and how you generate big change. And I've currently got a role as a peer worker in what used to be the community health sector. And yeah, it's so narrow, and I've never felt less powerful in a position in my life. And it's so dominated by professional ways of knowing and being, and the postage stamp size space that I get to operate in is kind of, I find it really disabling. And I'd love to see a much broader transdisciplinary framework used with people with lived experience of mental illness, and have that lived experience drive the systems rather than the professional frameworks, for me at least, seem to reduce everything to a biomedical condition or a psychological condition, and it just perpetuates the isolation and the alienation of people. They get to meet with their one clinical worker, but we don't actually encourage them to meet each other, which for me was the best thing for my mental health. And so, yeah, we seem to separate them and exacerbate their isolation at the moment, which I think is inconsistent with mental health outcomes.
Thanks, Daryl. Hannah?
Well, I have worked in the mental health system as a lived experience consultant, and I also completed training in spiritual care and have worked in clinical settings. I've found that you can build the longest lasting relationships though with people in the community, and I have really enjoyed being part of Schizy Inc. Doing that. I've also worked in a dance capacity with people, so bringing dance as part of a recovery journey. I think when we talk about spirituality, it can be like a airy-fairy thing, but it's about what gives people meaning, purpose, identity, hope, connection, and some sort of empowerment or relationship to power or source. And dance can be that for many people. So I've run peer support groups in the community. We're actually about to launch another series of workshops if anyone under 30 is interested. Yes, and I'm hoping that there might be more funding for things like spiritual care in the future as a part of the mental health system. But obviously change takes time, and in the meantime we have this community to be a part of as well.
I just want to jump in there. Why isn't spirituality included in mental health care at the moment?
Why isn't it? I think it's hard to measure. It's outside of the biomedical model, and as a result, there is a lot of stigma around spirituality, and there's sometimes an assumption that spirituality is only religion as well, and therefore you should go and get your support in a religious institution. However, in the mental health system of old, there was actually a lot of spiritual support that was funded and was funded by the government. So I'd love to see that come back into this modern day's mental health system, and support different worldviews. You know, when working in a spiritual care capacity, you start to notice that people from different cultural backgrounds start engaging with their treatment a bit more, because spirituality is more supportive of their cultural expression. And you know, we've got the voice here today. Everyone's voting at the moment. You know, spirituality is so much a part of First Nations culture and values and the way you know and see and engage in the world. And so that's my passion point. And to see it recognised in a multidisciplinary environment would be amazing.
Can I just add to that? I just want to add to it that psychiatry is notoriously secular as a discipline. They're very, very secular, are not open to a spiritual experience or their patients at all. So that secularity that they've had is an impediment to people expressing any spiritual needs or spiritual longing in that therapeutic setting. That's been an impediment for people.
And to expand on that, I think a lot of that has to do with a very strong distinction between concepts of science and spirituality as fundamentally opposed to one another, which obviously goes against a lot of the experiences of pretty much every culture, including a lot of people who are living in, predominantly Christian cultures, who feel isolated from the sort of religious and spiritual structures because they aren't Christian, specifically. I think that's a really important thing to address at some point, and I think it is actively detrimental to people's mental health to have that fundamental connection between the idea of basically Christian and Catholic churches and the only form of spirituality that we as white or mostly white people are allowed to engage in.
Thanks, Bramble. I might head on to Adam, but I'm going to come back to that soon because I want to ask about the intersectionality between sports and nature and spirituality. But we'll go to Adam first.
Okay, so what sort of work in the community have I done? Well, I've worked as a consumer consultant before. I've also worked as a key support worker for mental health for a while. And also there's, and with the arts, there's my music group in Geelong called SIMA, SIMMA, Socially Inclusive Musicians Mentoring Alliance. And I'm the president of that. And we've been running that group. Actually, it started when I was in the mental health rehab facility back in 2006, and that's where we started it really. And we've been doing some live streams. So I believe that like with these live streams, it was focused on song and story. So we've only done a couple so far, but in this year, and we've helping to people heal by telling their story of lived experience, and it's been going alright. But we've only done a couple, so that's what sort of work I've done that incorporates mental health plus just general. Yeah, so yeah, that's it.
Adam, how do you get funding to run SIMMA? Don't tell us the ins and outs.
I pretty much work for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually it costs me. It costs me. Yeah. But I got funding from the City Greater Geelong to do SIMMA relaunch last year. I got some funding, so we did get a little bit of funding. But actually, we went to Bunnings and did a barbecue once, and we took all the instruments, and I was just on fire that day and making up lyrics on the spot with the guitar, and we got $2,000 just in tips that day. Yeah, it's unreal. Yeah.
As a funding stream.
Yeah.
It's very interesting the funding balance between the mental health system model of doing things and the lived experience model of doing things. So I'm going to go back now to that kind of contrast between what's accepted in mental health treatment and support and systems out there and what's not. So this is where we get into the lived experience workforce area.
Yeah.
So Bramble, you were talking about, that psychiatry and Sandy, the psychiatry being very secular. So how does the mental health system begin to embrace further forms of healing and support outside of the medical model? Medication, counselling. How do we now start to embrace nature, sport, spirituality?
Jeez. That's a small question. Go, Bram, go.
All right. I personally have connections with some spiritual communities, and I engage with them mostly when I feel at my worst. I think it's incredibly helpful to have community around you, but specifically being able to express spiritual experiences, spiritual moments that you have in your life, and not necessarily disentangle them from your mental health experiences. A lot of the time, the experiences that you have can be your most catastrophic lows or your most euphoric highs, and those can connect you with a sense of higher purpose or spiritual meaning. And to not have room within the mental health system to actually explore that, to be so locked into a secular and anti-spiritual attitude, I think that there has to be an addressing of that with access within the mental health institution to things like religious counselling specifically, or spiritual counselling that's non-religious. You have to look at things that are embracing creativity, access to nature, things that make people feel grounded, but also part of the larger biosphere that is Earth.
I'm going to, just while you're talking, Bramble, I was going to ask you a question specific as well that you were happy to talk about, and that was the relationship between disability and mental health. Does that get addressed at all?
It doesn't get addressed in formal systems, in my opinion. A lot of people who are disabled in one way or another, and I use that rather than saying people with disability as a self-identifier, I consider myself disabled. A lot of people I know consider themselves disabled because when you're looking at the mental health system and when you're looking at the sort of disability structures that exist, you're looking at a Venn diagram that's just a circle in terms of how they treat you, but they hold the two things so fundamentally apart that unless you can prove that your mental health struggles are to the point where you can't work, they will not consider it disabling, even though it's incredibly socially isolating, it's incredibly difficult to form and maintain relationships, community. I think that mental health struggles are in fact inherently disabling, but disability inherently predisposes you towards certain mental health issues. Particularly depression, anxiety, agoraphobia, obsessive compulsive disorder. All of these are disabling, but they also develop when you are disabled and therefore isolated from your community. Again, if it were a Venn diagram, it would be a damn circle. You can't be disabled without experiencing some level of mental illness, and mental illness is fundamentally unrecognised as disabling, even though it fundamentally is. That isn't to say that disability is an inherently bad thing, I will hasten to add. I very strongly conform to the social model of disability, that is to say, it is the actions and structures of our society which make a disability actually disabling. If everything had ramps instead of stairs, I wouldn't be disabled.
Yes. Thanks, Bramble.
I think that's about it for me for the moment.
Sandy.
For so long, I was trapped in the mental health system. And a lot of people get trapped. And it's hard to get out of it. How do you get out of the fucking mental health system? Sorry, I swore, sorry. And that trap, that entrapment was so disempowering because I measured time passing by Modicate injections and psychiatrist appointments and hospital admissions. That was my life. And being trapped in that system was a pathway to nowhere. And I think, how do you get people out of that entrapment? For a start, give a person a place to call home. A place to call home where you can have sociability, good food, pets, things happening that are positive. A place to call home. Simple equation, but who gets it? I've been lucky to have a place to call home, and I understand my privilege of having that. I have Team Sandy. I understand the privilege of having Team Sandy. These things help me get out of the entrapment of the psych system and to find a pathway to somewhere more positive with hope, purpose and meaning. But whilst you're trapped in that place, it's just a pathway to nowhere, and it's so disabling. So, and that's the problem with the mental health system. Once it gets your claws into you, it can get you. And my friend Julie says, a life of total psychiatry will take away your soul. It's so true. It takes away your soul. And so how do you give a person back their soul and a reason to get out of bed and a place to call home? Those things for me are important in getting out of that entrapment.
And just to segue to Chelsea, you play hockey.
I play hockey.
And do you find that your hockey community nurtures you?
I was saying to Chelsea, it can be a two-way thing. I love the camaraderie of team sport. It's so intoxicating. If you're in the team and you're accepted and you feel part of it and it's a positive experience. It can also be a toxic experience if you don't feel part of that team. But for me, it's been a positive experience. And being an old fart goalie, I am the old fart goalie. I was voted Players Player this year and came third in the best and fairest and got the Coaches Award. So I'm doing something right. But as the old fart player, I'm by far the oldest person in the team. I'm 70 this year. And I actually understand that I'm in an ableist culture with hockey. It's very ableist, probably very neurotypical, I'm not sure. But I every day I'm standing in those goals, I say, aren't I privileged to be doing this? What a privilege to stand here in these goals, have a ballistic missile hit at me every 5 seconds, and when I make a save, my little goalie ego just about burst out of my chest, and I feel about 10 feet tall. When I let a goal in, I feel crushed, and I want to crawl under a rock. But the experience for me of hockey is so empowering because it's good for my mental health, it's good for my physical health. It's such a good experience, and it is a nurturing experience. They like me, I think. And that helps. But I understand the privilege. It's a privilege to do it, and to have Team Sandy in hockey. I mean, how privileged am I? I understand there are people who don't have that privilege, and my heart bleeds for that.
Something actually positive that I've seen from my perspective in my line of work in the last about 18 months is some organisations are actually starting to view physical wellness as a way to improve your mental health. So up until about 18 months ago, for example, the NDIS did not accept anything outside of a physical disability to mean that you are able to get a personal trainer under your NDIS funding. Now, pretty much any mental illness or disability that people have got, they are allowing people to get a personal trainer because it is starting to be more not only noticed but proven that having help with your physical health, but not only that, doing something for yourself, having someone there with you one-on-one to support you in a goal that you have that might not be solely related to improving your mental health. Some people want to be able to walk 5 kilometres. Some people want to be able to do a push-up, not because they want big muscles, but because they want to feel capable.
I want to do a cartwheel in my life. One cartwheel.
It's so important that people feel capable, and whether that be something that you think is small or something that you think is massive, it makes such a difference. And now that organisations such as the NDIS are recognising physical health as a means to improve your mental health, support workers are contacting us and saying, what can we do to help this person? Because participants, for example, aren't aware that they can get help with their physical health, and when they find out, it's such a game changer for people. So that is actually something positive that I'm seeing in the physical health space for mental health.
Thanks, Chelsea. Great. Daryl, what was the question? I think it was how can other things other than mental health treatments be useful?
I grew up in a really small community, Waiai, Strathmerton, which is north of Shepparton. And sport was pretty much all there was. So I played sport. I played football and cricket and basketball and tennis and table tennis and golf and just about everything. And I think I expended an enormous amount of energy playing sport, and with trial and error and a lot of good coaching, I became quite adept at sport. So it was a really important part of my identity. And I've coached football and coached tennis since, and played AFL and state tennis, and it was great fun, and it was great to have those exultant moments of triumph, and also how did that guy beat me? All of those experiences were wonderful. And I was also really lucky with the arts. I got to work with the Community Arts Network, and then when that was collapsed by former Premier Kennett, then was involved in re-establishing a network called the Cultural Development Network of Victoria, and I've twice been a board member there, and also taught community cultural development at the Victorian Arts, at the College for the Arts at the University of Melbourne. And again, that was just wonderful fun. Teaching leadership skills to people who were artists who wanted to animate and bring to life the struggles that people were having in all kinds of domains, within all kinds of identities. And that was just wonderful, rich, rewarding work for me. So for me, I suppose the thing that makes the biggest difference for me is like finding fields, and then finding how those fields can connect people, and looking at the survivor as capable, and the community as capable, the citizen as capable, and looking at people through a capability lens. I think overwhelmingly what our mental health system does is look at people through a depreciative inquiry lens, and I'm really interested in how do we do appreciative inquiry with one another. And for me, groups flourish when we learn what we do well. They don't necessarily flourish when we learn, what label we've had or what deviance we represent or whatever. It's like, how do you really get that high functioning group going? It's drawing on people's skills, their knowledge, their experience, their capabilities.
And I don't know if you can see up close, but Daryl's hands are very worn. And do you want to talk a little bit about what you do with earth as well and building, and you bring in community to your house, like to your property, and you have people from around the world staying with you? Is that something you want to just mention, or should we move on?
I'm happy to mention it.
Yeah, go for it.
I went through the Black Saturday bushfires, and so the neighbourhood where I lived was obliterated. So I managed to get back to my house after protectively sheltering in a house that burned down around me, one of my friend's places. We just happened to be there when the fire descended without any warning. And I managed to put the fire out, and so there was all sorts of barriers, not barriers that people with disability or a lived experience of mental illness are kind of used to. Lots of structural barriers, lots of political barriers, lots of being invaded by people who are well-meaning and trying to do good, but really are doing more harm in their efforts to do good. And so, I banded together with a lot of people with a lived experience of mental illness. Some of the best leaders in the aftermath of the fire were people with a lived experience. They were really good at supporting people to navigate systems and what to avoid as well as what to engage. And so, there was a lot of wisdom in the room often. Part of the rebuilding, I managed to prevent my house from being knocked over. The walls that remained, they were mud brick and they were really well glazed by the fire. I argued with the state government appointed bushfire organisation that was going to knock down all the houses and take all the materials to landfill at Bendigo. And so that was GrowCon. They're also a sponsor of the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. So they got that contract. I wrote a 24-page paper with a couple of friends, which was the basis of how we would use the materials that were left over to rebuild our own homes and create an adult learning community economy so that everyone could be employed. What happened when GrowCon got that tender that was shaped out of what we wrote was that 99% of people were unemployed after the disasters. They had no meaningful role to play in their communities rebuilding other than be a volunteer, and all that money went to people in Melbourne who drove up, like Dido workers, drive in, drive out. So I decided to rebuild a bushfire resilient building, so to retrofit what was left of my building and put it underground on the south side. So we've got an escarpment, a 70-degree escarpment, really rock in Nillumbik. It means no soil, Nillumbik. And so these bonsai eucalypts are growing out of rock. They're nutrient deficient and they're pyrophilic. And where water runs down an escarpment, fire roars up. And we live on top of that escarpment in Kinglake. So we know we're the most fire vulnerable human settlement in the world in history. And so designing a house, like I worked with Melbourne University's Centre of Design, and we had like all sorts of disciplines represented at that Centre of Design. And I built a house with a lot of help, although COVID didn't help much because before that, the Banking Royal Commission didn't help much because I couldn't borrow money, and it was like 4 times the cost of the value of the insurance to rebuild in that context. So I found a female group leader who wanted to be involved in building. So to my daughter's astonishment, I chose 6 women under 30 with no trade experience to work with me to rebuild my house. And the idea was to build a community while building a building. And so it was real, because it was such a radical design. the standard tradespeople couldn't understand it, if that makes sense.
I might
So,
just
yeah.
spin to the end.
So yeah, we've got people from all over the world who came.
Yeah.
And it was super exciting. I literally had people from 5 continents, and they lived on the property with me, and I fed them and housed them, and they learned how to build houses. And this is a fundamental human determinant of well-being, to learn how to build your own house. And so the people that graduated from that 1 month intensive knew they could build their own house once they finished. And I'm reminded of James, who was working as a landscape designer, and he came really depressed. And James looked like a Greek god. He was 6'4" and he had really broad shoulders and incredibly good looking. But he was really dragging his ass around. He was really quite sad at the beginning. But at the end of the 30 days, he knew he could do anything, and he kind of slammed walls together and put the basis for the roof on. And I remember his girlfriend coming to the house on the 30th day, and she came in through what was the old bathroom, and she had a bit of pace going, and then she leapt and she landed on me. And she just gave me the biggest hug ever. She was just so thankful for what that community, what people can do when they come together. And the people were amazing. And, that's what continues to give me hope, if I have any, is just how well people can work together. And particularly in the aftermath of disasters, the communities that arise in the aftermath of disasters are amazing, and they show what can be done when the bureaucracy, the administration and the power structures are dissolved. All of a sudden people self-organise and they get shit done. And I can remember that last thing, reporting
10 seconds.
to, I think it was Communities in Control. So my then partner and I got the keynote speech at that conference, and it's 1,500 people. And what I was reporting on was 16 self-organising systems that met every fundamental need in a community that had been obliterated by fire and was locked down by police.
I don't want to jump in, Daryl, because we could listen to this all day, because what you're saying is just incredible. We do need to move on though, but thank you so much for opening that story. Yeah, that's incredible. And Daryl's going to be here for the next 6 hours to talk to each of you individually in an orderly fashion. Thanks, Daryl. Hannah, can you sum up what you do bringing mental health healing in a different way that isn't mental health, obvious treatments, counselling, medication? What can spirituality bring to healing?
Well, I think it can give you something else to focus on. When you're constantly focused on what's wrong with you and the pathology biomedical model, you miss out on the opportunity that is also around you. And I think spirituality, it requires you to look beyond yourself. So sometimes that involves looking to community. Other times it's about how you find energy and power, beyond, your own human means. But I think spirituality being part of a community and also, just finding meaning outside of, the medical model is really important. For me, it's also happened through dance. Dance has been a part of, finding an embodied spirituality. And I want to recognize also that there's many different forms. I think also to be able to access this kind of service or, using spirituality as a form of personal medicine as well. So it's about the things that we do that give us meaning and purpose and get us out of the house and help us stay well. Just being able to get out of bed in the morning and have a reason to do that is a big one. And I think my dance practice has been a big part of that. I have a faith as well. People have different expressions of culture and community and ways of connecting to people around them. So, and spiritual care is about helping people to recognize that. Because, when you're at that low point, often like all your treatment and your, everything can change around you, and spirituality is something that you can have ownership over at the end of the day, and really run with as a form of recovery. So,
Thanks, Hannah. So it's a constant.
yeah, it's a constant thing that if you can learn how to harness and maximize in your career journey, you can learn that.
Thanks, Hannah. And Adam,
Yes.
wrap it up.
Right. Okay. There's something I want to say about housing though. Does anyone know Abraham's Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Right. We learn that when we do Cert 4, whatever we do, right? But the food and shelter is, primary. You don't have a house. And I was like homeless for 4.5 months just recently. I just found a place a month ago, and my mental health was just not good. And I'm thinking, if that's not like, like I think with the mental health system really should focus on housing, like safe, affordable housing. And it's just, to me, it's ridiculous if they don't do that.
Yeah.
And that goes, like housing, building your own house is amazing. And also, I was going to say, when it comes to mental health, it seems like the whole thing, like the world seems to be geared on economy. It's all about economics. Like why, you don't work, therefore you're mentally ill. And it's like, well, not really. No, maybe, to me, it's just, I think that is unfortunately the realistic point of it is that, for some reason, they consider people who are mentally ill not working in economy. Yeah, so I don't know. But the actual summing up of what I do, well, I suppose if I just speak my truth to people about my experiences, I think I'm doing a lot of the work there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like what Sandy said at the start, that you don't work. Maybe, and you're on the DSP, but for me, there's different economies, and you're doing amazing work. You might not be paid for it.
Well, the DSP enabled me to write poetry and be a writer and do other things that were made it possible, because if I didn't have DSP, I would have been struggling somewhere, I don't know where, it would have been hopeless. So it actually was an enabler for me, and it gave me a chance to consolidate my identity, to put in place a life that I could live that was livable and manageable, and it actually was helpful for me.
Yeah. We might need to bring
So I was going to say one thing.
10 seconds.
Yeah, they say that every single person who goes through a mental health crisis all has financial hardship at the same time. Now, what comes first, chicken or egg scenario? So
Yeah. There's so many things here that have been open that we need to unpack properly. But I think just for a précis and a skim of the top, I think you've done a brilliant job. Just bringing the top of this. So can we give a little round of applause to the panel? And can you just thank each other for sitting through the tech issues at the start, and thank the Zoom people for persevering on Zoom, and thank you from us too. Can we give the audience a round of applause? Yeah. Thank you. We're running late, of course, but let's open it up to a couple of Q&As. Has anyone got anything busting that you want to